We got our first look at the Jeff Hafley defense, and they are flying around.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. We are almost to NFL season, but almost. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Family night. Our first chance to see this new look Jeff Hafley defense in a game situation under the bright lights with 60,000 plus at Lambeau Field for a practice. We're talking about practice. And it is hard not to get excited about what we saw. On the very first throw, I believe, on 11 on 11, Javon Bullard comes screaming downhill to get a breakup. There was another play, Javon Bullard, in the red zone, sinking underneath a throw, nearly had an interception. A seam throw, Quay Walker gets his hands on. There were multiple balls batted at the line of scrimmage, contested catches. It just felt like a different style of defense, which it should. That's what it is. But it felt like a different intensity, a different mindset, a different philosophy, all of the things that we had hoped coming in that Jeff Hafley would bring, would change. It seems like those things are changing. We saw, I understand, against an offensive line that is not quite coalesced. Zach Tom not out there. That's a big loss when you're going, ones versus ones. But this front consistently brought it. Multiple plays. In fact, 2 out of 3 plays, Rashawn Gary just absolutely destroyed. Am I going to look at the offense and say, what are you doing? Or going to go, hey, Rashawn Gary, really good football player. Very much the latter for me. Now, Jordan Love, he made some nice throws. We're going to talk about Jordan Love later, but to me, the big takeaway from what I saw was, and this is without Edgerrin Cooper, this is with, Eric Wilson playing in base, with Isaiah McDuffie and Quay Walker out there. It does look like Quay Walker is being utilized in a way that fits his athletic profile a little bit better. We saw the defense getting upfield and creating some uncertainty with blockers, with the quarterbacks. Jordan had to hold or pump or pat the ball when maybe in other circumstances he wouldn't. And I mentioned already the intensity on the outside, even the completions in one-on-ones. Highly contested, highly guarded. We saw Eric Stokes look like Eric Stokes physically. We saw Jair Alexander look like Jair Alexander. We saw Javon Bullard being deployed in the nickel as a safety. Evan Williams as a sort of dime linebacker in 3 safety looks. We saw really all the things we wanted to see. Now, you do want to strike that balance if you're trying to, maximize. Okay, we want the offense to look really good and we want the defense to also be really good. So how do you find that balance? You want the offense to be able to do whatever they can, do whatever they want, right, against a good defense. But we also want this Packers defense to show up against an offense as good as the Packers offense. And I felt like, look, scheming, and that's the kind of stuff that Matt LaFleur is best at. Finding the holes on the defense and attacking them. They weren't doing that. They weren't doing that. They were calling their bread and butter plays, their basic plays. Like, there was a little bit of pre-snap motion. I can't recall a jet motion, an orbit motion, a cheat motion. This is an essential part of this offense. So I don't want to get too caught up in like, oh, the defense looks good, but I remember watching the defense last year. I remember watching the defense 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even with a defense that at those moments, at least 2 or 3 years ago, more quote unquote talent. And I understand when you have veterans, you're not playing with the same sort of intensity at a family night practice that, Javon Bullard as a rookie is playing with. But it is the feeling you get watching a defense is often the best way to evaluate a defense. Like, you watch the Browns last year and you go, man, that defense is so fun to watch. Fly around, connected when they're in zone coverage. They're attacking downhill, tackling with force, creating penetration, pressuring the quarterback, creating opportunities for turnovers. They were fun. The same with the Baltimore Ravens. It's not always just, well, they played really disciplined. Like, there are schematic things that are different. There are alignment things that are different. And those are important. But sometimes it's as simple as the vibes are different. And the vibes are just so clearly different. And I've said this before, but I think Jeff Hafley is going to play in a lot of ways the way that fans would call a defense if they got the opportunity. A lot of man coverage, blitz, designer blitz, zero blitz, like bring everybody, fire everything. We didn't see that, of course, because it's a practice. And so you're not going to do that. But they got into the passing lanes for Jordan Love and a really good offense. They batted balls at the line of scrimmage. They created pressure so Jordan Love had to flush out of the pocket and try and make a throw. There was one. Now, in real life, Jordan probably takes off and runs, but Jordan rolls out, tries to find somebody. There's no one. He throws to Luke Musgrave out of bounds. Again, he could have taken off and run in a real game. That's probably what he would have done. But it was good coverage. It was a disciplined group. And it seems like not only the low-hanging fruit schematic things, like, don't ask a corner to take on a tight end when you've got two tight ends to a side. Those kinds of things are changing. But what we heard from Jeff Hafley was, I want the guys to play fast. I want them to be empowered. I want them to play downhill, all those things. And those are easy things for coaches to say and much harder for coaches to actually find ways to implement. How can you actually get your guys to play? Every defensive coordinator would like it to be straightforward, play fast, go get the ball carrier, create turnovers, but play discipline at the same time. That's not an easy thing to do. And the Packers seem to be on their way to finding ways to do it. Now, in the one-on-ones, the offense was cooking. Jordan Love's deep ball was cooking. And that is going to be an essential piece when it comes to maintaining and leveling up this offense in 2024. We're going to talk about it next. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Sometimes you have to have non-negotiables. I am always going to do this thing for me. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. And BetterHelp can help you get there. Find the things in your life that you want to make non-negotiables, that you have to make time for. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get insight from the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jordan Love threw a couple absolute dimes in the one-on-one deep ball portion of Family Night, including one where Christian Watson and Jair Alexander went head-to-head. They actually went out of turn so they could get the rep. Ja had really good coverage, and Jordan Love just put it where only Christian Watson could get it. He scored, found the ball, tracked it, caught it. Romeo Doubs had a deep ball touchdown. Jaden Reed had a deep ball touchdown. Dontavian Wicks had a deep ball touchdown. And this was the difference. We talked last week about explosive plays and starting early. Jordan Love was a big part of that. Now, he had to get on the same page with his receivers, and they define the concepts that worked for them. How are you going to maximize finding shot plays when you don't have your shot play receiver, when Christian Watson is not healthy and can't always give you those things? Now, the answer turned out to be a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit everywhere. But that's the beauty of this offense. When you look at the first 9 weeks, Jordan Love was the worst graded deep ball thrower in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. 36 out of 36 in qualifying quarterbacks. Bad. And we talked about it in real time. They could not get those deep balls even when guys were open. It seemed like it was in Jordan Love's head. And it was something that, remember, Matt LaFleur had talked to him about, and hey, we want him to put a little bit more touch on the ball. And it felt like he was aiming these throws, not throwing them. And when Matt LaFleur says the Pittsburgh game changed the way that they viewed this offense and what it was capable of, I think of a really underrated throw in the Love season last year, and that is the deep ball touchdown to Jaden Reed that ends up being between two defenders. I believe it was a deep over route, and it's a beautiful throw where only the receiver can get it. Jaden Reed makes the play, takes the contact, and it's a touchdown. And you went, oh, okay. Well, from week 10 through the playoffs, Jordan Love was 5th in Pro Football Focus deep grade. Led the NFL in big time throws on deep balls and had just 2 turnover-worthy plays on deep balls in the second half of the season, including playoffs. They also threw the most deep balls. Like not by a small margin either. Jordan Love in the second half of the season had 23 balls charted as 20 plus yards in the air. The next closest was 18. That was Will Levis. 5 more than the next closest guy. And we're only talking about 23 total. So 5 more, that's a lot more. That's a lot more. It was a willingness and it was an efficacy difference. Now, throw Christian Watson into the mix, a healthy Christian Watson. I wrote about this a little bit last week. Christian Watson being back helps the pieces in this offense fit together, but everyone is capable of producing shot plays. I went back and looked last year, though. And the only two players that produced plays of 40 or more yards, so now we're talking big time chunk plays, Christian Watson and Jaden Reed. And that's okay because Christian Watson is your outside receiver. Jaden Reed is your slot receiver. And Romeo Doubs had a couple that were like mid-30s. Dontavian Wicks, mid-30s a couple times. But Dontavian Wicks' biggest play of the season, the two of them were catch and runs, not air yard winning deep. Well, that was something in Virginia he did really well, and he has the route running to be able to shake guys, double moves, bang, bang, gone. Little out and up. Little, slant and go. You've got a repertoire of double moves in this offense that Matt LaFleur had Devontae Adams running. Larry McCarron actually called Dontavian Wicks, I think he called him Devontae Wicks, and I'm not going to correct him because some of those movement skills are there. You see them. They would really benefit from Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks taking a step forward in those areas, but they're able to create chunk plays without necessarily throwing the deep balls the way that we're used to seeing like Aaron Rodgers throw them, where he's going to throw those transition goes, those 3-step go routes on the sideline, and it's just like the prettiest thing you've ever seen. I don't think that's going to be where Jordan Love lives. I think he could do it. It's really more going to be hard play action, and then now you take your deep shot. Having someone like Christian Watson opens up everything for everyone else. They have the receivers to do this. Now, if Christian Watson gets hurt, I think it becomes more difficult. I think you need Luke Musgrave in a situation like that to be able to stretch the middle of the field. We saw Love try to hit a seam ball to Ben Sims. That was a little out in front, but that's a play that I would expect, frankly, Tucker Kraft to make. It's a catch that I would have expected Luke Musgrave to make, but you're talking about tight end 3 for a reason. So the Jordan Love piece of it, his evolution, his comfort with the deep ball and just saying, I'm not going to aim it, I'm going to throw it. And not just throw it, I'm going to rip it. You saw it. And I know it's just practice. But it was like the high level throws. This was a conversation we had on Locked On Packers where last year, I don't remember if it was during the season or in the offseason, we're going, even at Utah State where he was an inconsistent deep ball thrower, you saw the high level, like, oh my God, throws. We weren't even seeing that in the first half. It was just miss, miss, miss. So if you want to say, okay, well, he's going to regress this year. He's not going to be the 5th best. Well, he was also not going to be the worst in all likelihood. He was probably going to come back up. So if he's the 12th, the 17th best over the course of the season graded quarterback, okay, on deep ball throws, that's probably fine, honestly. Because I think he's going to be efficient enough in the short and intermediate levels of the field. But this is something that the Packers leaned into. And so if they can get better at it because the quarterback and the receivers are on the same page more frequently, because Love has a better feel for, okay, when I hit the top of my drop, if that's Christian Watson out there, I'm going to have to lay it out. If that's Romeo Doubs, maybe I'm perfectly in sync. If it's Dontavian Wicks, maybe it's got to be this. Jordan Love has enough off-speed pitches, has enough variance in the way that he can throw the ball, that he has the ability to make those adjustments in real time. If they can carry over the momentum from that second half, if that second half was a real thing where Love just got more comfortable with these guys, he felt more comfortable with his own mechanics, and by the end of the season, he's just dotting guys up. If that's the Jordan Love deep ball thrower that we see, that the Packers are able to put on the field week in and week out, yeah, this offense is going to be every bit as good as we think they can be. It's going to take the offensive line to do it, though. We're going to talk about them when we get back on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But with the NBA and NHL playoffs now way over, and now all of a sudden the Olympics, like we're coming up. We got a great golf final, Scotty Scheffler, but we're not a ton left. The sports are not sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Find some futures in the NFL if you want. I just added a little bit. I got the Patriots over. Very, very happy about that one. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen today. Now go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight on the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league. Go find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the description. So you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We mentioned last week as we were heading into family night that Jordan Morgan seemed to be the right guard. First series with the ones, Jordan Morgan is your right guard. And one of the things that I was wondering about was, okay, then what are they going to do with Sean Rhyan? Because I still think he has a place and a future on this offensive line. He was getting first team center reps. I found that interesting. And though in practice the other day, Royce Newman was getting some first team left guard reps, on family night, he was not playing until deep into this game. Interesting on a number of levels. So if Jordan Morgan is going to be your right guard, again, I don't want to litigate the positional value thing. I think Jordan Morgan can be a very good guard. I think he can be a Pro Bowl level guard. I'm very excited to see him and Elton Jenkins play together, then with Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker together. And then you're talking about, okay, then what do you have at the center position? You can build something akin to what the Lions have built with the best offensive line in the league. They don't have anyone as good as Penei Sewell, but they've got some really good pieces. I'm excited to see Jordan Morgan. Did I think he was flawless? No, but you can see the appeal, the footwork, the size. It is pretty special in terms of that combination. The arm length is a real thing. I think the athleticism tested better than I thought it would. But I'm excited to see what that looks like as he progresses. It's hard to tell when your right tackle is Kadeem Telford or Caleb Jones and not Zach Tom. But after family night, we got word from Zach Tom. This was via ESPN, Rob Domofsky, that Zach Tom is going to be back on the field as soon as this week. Someone was just asking me, is there a concern that Tom is not going to be ready for week one? The answer is no. And in fact, Tucker Kraft is also going to return to practice this week, doing some individual drills. We'll see where it goes from there. And Zach Tom has been doing some work at practice, but he's going to be back out there doing the real deal stuff. This was an offensive line that by the end of last year was playing at an extremely high level, even with the issues that we know Josh Myers is not my favorite. John Runyon Jr. was playing hurt. Sean Rhyan was rotating. I mean, they were platooning a starting offensive line spot in the playoffs, and it worked. It was fine. Like, it didn't hurt the Packers that they were having to platoon those guys. This was an elite offensive line, and if Zach Tom doesn't get hurt, I think they beat the 49ers. I understand Jordan Love had some brain farts at the end there, but I think if Zach Tom is healthy, if he doesn't get concussed, it was pressure. Jordan got uncomfortable back there in a way that he hadn't been all game. The Sean Rhyan at center stuff is particularly interesting because he got those reps with the first team. This was not a second team, hey, we're cross-training him, we don't have a backup center, so we're trying to get a look at him and all that stuff. It's more than that when it's a first team rep at center. And I've been saying for weeks, everydayers are sick of this, I'm sure. But if the competition is Elgton Jenkins versus Josh Myers, there is no competition. But if they would prefer to keep Elgton Jenkins at left guard and they want to see what Sean Rhyan's got, this is getting interesting to me. Because what this does is, okay, Jordan Morgan's your starting guard. Elgton Jenkins is your starting guard. Now, if you have someone who can give you a real look at pushing Josh Myers, and it doesn't involve rejiggering your offensive line. It doesn't involve shuffling or reshaping your offensive line. It's just, hey, this other guy is going to get a series now. And if he plays better than you, and Sean Rhyan has done this. We've seen him do it. He did it for like 6 games at the end of last year. And especially in run situations, outplayed John Runyan Jr. In passing game situations, John Runyan Jr., I still believe is one of the better pass blocking guards in the league. It's why the New York Giants paid him all the money that they did. It's because he's a good pass blocker. But if you can get him some center looks, or Josh Myers, who has an injury history, if he goes down for a month, now you have someone who can just slide right in and play and can maybe take that job. Or you can do the rotation early on. Now, center, I don't know if that's the ideal thing to do. You really want your center and your quarterback to have that good chemistry on snaps especially. But if Sean Rhyan can do the snapping without issue, this is something worth exploring because Josh Myers is not getting a contract extension in Green Bay. I think that ship has long sailed. So getting a look at Sean Rhyan in camp in preseason is a really smart thing. And we've also, we don't know, and I want to make this clear. We don't know the reason that Josh Myers has been missing camp. There's been a couple days he's been out. Personal days. We don't know what's going on with him. And I did just want to say, because I know that I've been hard on him as a player, it has nothing to do with him as a person. And I hope that whatever is happening with him is fixable, is minor, and that he comes through this better for it. Because to miss a couple days of training camp in what is a really important training camp for him, you have to think whatever it is important. And I hope that he's okay, that the people he cares about are okay. On a personal level, I hope he is and his family are okay. I think that's important for me to say as someone who, I can feel myself sometimes having distance between me and the players as people with as often as we talk about them like they're in a video game. And it's important, I think, for me and for everybody to remember they are people. There's a brain and a head underneath those helmets. And it's important for us to acknowledge that. So I hope whatever Josh is going through, he can work through, get through, and be okay. We don't know what it is, and I'm not going to speculate. But having someone who can, in those moments, when he's not at practice, get those reps. That's useful for the Packers because you just never know. You just never know. And someone like Sean Rhyan seems like a great guy. Again, hard worker, just hasn't found the right opportunity. And so maybe this is a chance for him. We'll see. Back tomorrow, much more. The Packers opened their preseason this week, later in the week. So we're going to get you ready for that. We're not going to do like a whole game week for those of you who are relatively new to the show, maybe haven't been in with us during the season. We usually have Expert Tuesday. We've got Zhao Doing on Wednesday. Lily Zhao is back for another season of Zhao Doing. We'll have our opponent crossover Thursday. And then maybe another interview on Fridays. We did that a lot during the season. I liked that flow. I think we will probably continue that as well. But we're going to have Warren Sharp here on the show. I have a lot of cool stuff that I want to bring you before the season opens. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Follow the podcast on Instagram, Locked On Packers. On TikTok, Locked On Packers. Go subscribe on any podcast platform that you have, Locked On Packers. Go subscribe on YouTube, Locked On Packers, so you can stay Locked On Packers.